Harrison Ford happened to be there. Somebody introduced me to him, and I talked to him for 20 minutes about Blade Runner, which was the highlight of my evening/life. And I was like, so with the voiceover, did you phone it in? Because, people speculate this. And like, son, I think you know more about this film than I do.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub. For the challenges you face as a startup founder, Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub is here to help. The platform provides founders with free resources like Azure credits, development tools like GitHub, mentorship resources, productivity software, training, and so much more. The program is open to all and takes 5 minutes to apply with no funding required. Learn more and sign up at aka.ms/thisweekinstartups. Assure is the leading provider of special purpose vehicles and fund administration with over 5,000 completed transactions and $2.5 billion under administration. Twist listeners can get 20% off their first SPV at assure.co/twist. That's assure.co/twist. And Microacquire, the startup acquisition marketplace. Start the right acquisition conversations at your own pace. Get free and instant access to over 100,000 trusted buyers with total anonymity. Say goodbye to brokers and meet your ideal buyer today. Go to try.microacquire.com/twist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. Back from her triumphant vacation. She took some time off. She went to incredible locations like the dying, decrepit, poisoned Salton Sea, incredible world tour. She's back, the Oracle of Oakland, our dame from the Podcasting Hall of Fame. Yes, the Queen of Green, Molly Wood. Welcome back to the program.
My God, I get my very own all-in style hype intro?
Absolutely. Hype intros are coming for everybody.
You have made my entire month, year. That's outstanding.
That's why I was smiling, because I knew you'd get a kick out of it, because I was like, you know what? Molly deserves one. I'm gonna workshop one. So thanks to Nick for workshopping with me.
Damn. I'm
particularly proud of the dame from the Podcasting Hall of Fame.
The Podcasting Hall of Fame has been I'm blushing a little bit. Like, that was huge for me. It was huge, man.
If everybody could help me though, I've done 3 weeks of these intros that all
I know, like, how long can you keep that up? Because that's amazing.
I can't keep it up. There's no way I can keep it up. But if people can give me DMs open, send me one-liners. Basically, here's how you make the intro. You find something in the orbit of somebody, like if I'm breaking chops with Sachs that he's into Tucker, then you just got to get a word or two that rhymes with Tucker, and then you start workshopping it in your brain. Mm-hmm. Like he's a sucker for Tucker, Yeah,
no, I get it. I went to a different word, obviously.
How did you friends with that effer? That's good. I might use that one again. Actually, Nick,
you got that E already on the All In podcast. You might as well just go for it.
We do have an explicit there.
J. Cal God bars. Look at him go.
People are losing their minds in the comments about this, and I'm just like, I can't keep it up. It's literally, but I give Nick a lot of credit. Producer Nick came up with Sasshole for Sachs.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, I think that was all Nick. And I don't know, because I asked the producers to put a couple notes in for me. And, I'll be honest, with comedy, and most of them fall flat. But that one, that was a good one. Split the arrow with that one. All right, we got a lot of news today. So I guess.
Okay, let's just acknowledge up front.
Yes, please.
This is awkward for Jason. And I am not going to push you.
Yeah, well, I
needled you a little bit the last time we talked about this, and I won't, because I know it's tough
just complicated. If you're best friends, I have 3 or 4 best friends who are in the news a lot, and it just makes it hard for me to comment on stuff, especially, and we can leave this in the show. I give the disclaimer all the time. If Travis or Elon or whoever are in the news, sometimes I can or can't comment on it because I'm friends with them. And then what happens is I become this backdoor proxy. So last week, I got asked to be on 20 different news programs, not to talk about the work I'm doing in the world.
Yeah.
But to talk about, whatever Elon's doing. And that's fine. I understand. And I will go to bat. My general philosophy is if like they're getting beat up in the press about something, like in the old days, I would go to bat for them because there was nobody else and people didn't even know the company. So when you see old clips of me defending Tesla, like, hey, we should have green cars, or defending Uber, hey, Travis is going to figure it out. That's a kind of a different moment than now when people have arrived. And so let's get right into it. Obviously, people know that Elon has a position in Twitter and was going to join the board. And Parag Agrawal. Agrawal, got it right. Okay, thank God. I mean, it's so weird with my dyslexia. Sometimes I just nail the hard ones and then I get like Jones wrong.
That's a hard one too, though.
Jonas.
That's like a rural juror. Like it's hard to put all those. Yeah. Anyway,
Parag Agrawal. It's actually pretty easy for me.
Yep. Okay. So Parag tweeted out this memo that he sent to the entire Twitter team saying that Elon Musk would not, in fact, be taking a board seat. So to get you all caught up, and I'm sure you have been, because you're all in our industry and have been paying attention to this nonstop, which even I was while I was by the pool.
Pretty compelling.
Elon Musk has taken this stake in Twitter, 9.2%. It sounded like he was going to join the board of Twitter. And then over the weekend, Parag sent this note saying Elon Musk has decided not to join our board. I'm just going to read some or all of this, and then we'll discuss. Here's what I can share about what happened, Parag wrote. The board and I had many discussions about Elon joining the board and with Elon directly. We were excited to collaborate and clear about the risks. We also believed that having Elon as a fiduciary of the company, where he, like all board members, has to act in the best interest of the company and all our shareholders, was the best path forward. The board offered him a seat. We announced on Tuesday that Elon would be appointed to the board contingent on a background check and formal acceptance. Elon's appointment to the board was to become officially effective 4/9. That was Friday, I think. But Elon shared that same morning that he will no longer be joining the board. I believe this is for the best. We have and always will value input from our shareholders, whether they're on our board or not. Elon is our biggest shareholder and will remain open to his input. There will be distractions ahead, but our goals and priorities remain unchanged. The decisions we make and how to execute is in our hands, no one else's. Let's tune out the noise and stay focused on the work and what we're building.
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of speculation as to why this is. I don't have inside information. So just to make that clear for the reaggregators, please don't reaggregate anything I say.
So awkward.
Adding to it is I went to the Gigafactory opening because all my friends were there. And then somebody took video of me talking to Harrison Ford in the VIP. Harrison Ford happened to be there. Somebody introduced me to him. And I talked to him for 20 minutes about Blade Runner, which was the highlight of my evening/life. And I was like, so with the voiceover, did you phone it in? Because, people speculate this. And he's like, son, I think you know more about this film than I do. And I was like, wow.
Like, dude, you should watch my show.
Because I was like, well, tell me about Ridley Scott or whatever. And I opened up by saying, listen, I just want to thank you for my childhood. Like Mosquito Coast, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, Star Wars. I said, it's just amazing and just thrilling to meet you. And I just want to say thank you because like a lot of the highlights of my childhood were, around the performance you gave.
It's really true.
Now you're making me feel old, Jake Al. I'm workshopping my Harrison Ford. Son, I think you know more about this film than I do. It was the greatest.
Amazing.
I asked him, like, did you know you were a replicant? I was like, did you know you were a replicant in Blade Runner? And he says to me, I told Ridley Scott, don't tell me. I don't want to know. That's for you to decide. I want to do a detective movie. And I read the script and they have voiceover in the script. And I want to show it through actions. And they want me to do voiceover. I was in it for a detective movie. And it was the greatest conversation. Really? Yeah. And I'm talking to him with Walter Isaacson, Harrison Ford are talking.
Yeah.
And now it's getting 10 minutes, 15, and there is like a group of people trying to get to either of those two. And in all honesty, a couple people want to take a couple selfies with me. But, Harrison Ford is the show. And so, he doesn't want to stop talking to us because we're having like a great conversation about Ridley Scott, about film, about Tesla, about car. I mean, just everything. It was a great moment. So here's what I think. There is no greater product person or executive, and this is kind of obvious just in terms of like experience and success, than Elon at Twitter. And on a product basis, he uses Twitter more effectively than anyone at Twitter and probably knows the product as good or better. And so he, as a way that he operates businesses, talks about them. He does customer support in real time. So whether you like his style or not, if you just look at it on a customer support and a product basis, let's just narrow on those two things, which is a big part of running a successful company, is listening to your customers and building great products. He's better than anybody there, hands down. I mean, the guys, while this was all going down, the Gigafactory is the largest footprint building in the world. I believe in the United States for sure. I mean, this thing, Molly, when you look at it, like it took me 15, 20 minutes to walk to like that, top level VIP area to like watch the presentations and everything. I mean, it's like a long building. It is crazy. And then he also was taking people to the International Space Station on a tourist thing. This is all in the same 48-hour period. So if you're on the board of a company like this, you can't talk about the product anymore. That's over. And so I don't know why he made the decision. I don't know Parag's decisions. I don't know the board's decision. I have no insight into anything. But for me, I'd rather see Elon talking about the product all day long. And there was a very vibrant discussion about the product this weekend, including Twitter Blue, which I have, and which is kind of not worth paying for. But I have talked for many years. In fact, since 2007, 2008, I've been talking about, hey, the blue check mark should be something that anybody can pay for. And then people are like, well, then how would that affect journalists like us who have the blue check mark and we feel special about it, or celebrities? And we all know the history of the blue check mark. The blue check mark came because a lot of us had people faking, and they just wanted to make sure you knew who was the real Ashton Kutcher. In fact, I think he was patient zero on the blue check mark. I'm actually sure of that. Right. Yeah, I remember having conversations with Ev about it. And so I think those kind of discussions are where Elon can be most helpful. And the amount of attention that Twitter is getting now is huge. And I guess there's speculation that if he was on the board, he could only build a certain size position. And so again, I don't know anything. Right. Sincerely, do not know anything. Don't re-aggregate me. But maybe he wants to own more, or, maybe he wants to talk about it. And so that's probably better for everybody. By some estimates, over 90% of startups will go out of business in year one. Don't I know it as an angel investor? That rings true to me. And that's why Microsoft created the Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub. This hub provides founders at any stage with up to 6 figures in resources. Wait until you hear about this ridiculous list of perks. You're going to get up to 150,000 in Azure credits based on your stage and size. You're going to get technology benefits like free access to GitHub's enterprise tier, technical advice from experts at Azure and Microsoft Cloud, super helpful, one-to-one mentorship from their mentor network, plus exclusive benefits and discounts from companies like OpenAI, Very impressive. And the best part is there are no fundraising requirements, unlike others in the industry. The Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub doesn't require startups to be investor-backed or third-party validated to sign up for access benefits. No, it's open to everybody. It's truly open to any founder. Microsoft wants to support you, and you will get that support whether you've been anointed by some special people or not. They care about all founders at Microsoft. It's not about who you know. It's about what you're building. That's what Microsoft cares about. Any founder at any stage can get up to 6 figures of value by signing up right now at aka.ms/thisweekinstartups. Once again, you're going to start up and start building today at aka.ms/thisweekinstartups. Go ahead and go there and get those credits. I don't know what your take on it is.
So there's obviously a lot of speculation about this. Nonstop. There were tweets that were deleted over the weekend, which was interesting, right? There were a lot of tweets that Elon made over the weekend that were somewhat critical of Twitter, like nobody's at the headquarters, so we should turn it. There was as usual, a boob joke. Listen, I have the sense of humor of a 14-year-old boy myself, but like,
yeah, I mean, you were doing the BDE jokes just 2 weeks ago on the program, so you guys might not be that different.
Probably. It's very possible
Kettle,
that
black.
Like in private we would have the same, but I don't make those jokes on Twitter. I only make them.
You did make it on the pod, though.
On podcasts.
Just on the podcast.
Anyway, so there were a lot of tweets that were deleted. Then there was then there's the Kremlinology of like, well, he liked this one tweet where somebody said that he was told to be quiet and play nice, and he liked that. And then, of course, there was the speculation they may have decided not to take a board seat because he may want to own more than, 14.9%, I think is the max you can own.
as the
if
director,
you're a board member. And so there were.
I don't even know where that comes from, that concept. And so that felt to me, I don't know, but I would like to get fact check on this, that was just some agreement they came to, that they picked some number that he could own as a board director.
Yeah.
But obviously,
I wonder, do you think it's exclusive to him?
It could be one of two things. It could have been something they negotiated with him. It could be something that's in the charter of the company that, independent board directors or board directors will only own up to this amount without consulting with the board. It could be like not a poison pill, but like a little bit of a circuit breaker. If you're going to accumulate more, just let us know kind of situation, or get approval. So I don't think anybody knows exactly where that comes from, but it would be good to get some clarity on that, obviously. Yeah. But one of the things that's interesting about Twitter, and this goes to governance, which we talk about on this program all the time because we're early stage investors, is unlike the New York Times or Facebook, which have very strong owner control. Like the New York Times is basically a private company that acts as a public company with
Sulzberger.
Is my dyslexia going crazy?
That one's like a mushmouth
that's
one
a
for
hard
sure.
one. Sulzbergers control that company, and then like some Mexican billionaire bought. I forgot his name, Carlos. Something. Come to us. Anyway, he bought a ton of it, but he has no say.
Right.
It's like,
totally.
So it's like a faux public company. And then you look at Facebook, that's kind of another faux public company where like Zuckerberg's kids, grandkids, great grandkids, like 17 generations from now will still control the company. It's kind of weird that you get to be public and then also get to be controlled like a private company. I always felt that was weird. Like, I don't know if we should allow that. Or maybe
in theory, no, we definitely should not. There should be like, anyway.
Well, anyway, I mean, it's sort of like a hybrid, right?
Like that.
And Twitter is not like that. So
it's
here's
almost
the
like
thing.
a DAO when it comes to the board. It's just like a mess.
It's like the United States of America. There's 300 million plus people and 270 million were adults. There's theoretically 270 million votes. Twitter has some number of votes. And so for people who are complaining on the left or the far left or whoever, like, start a group and buy 1 billion. It's not that hard for, people who have track records to pull together $1 billion or $2 billion as a consortium and buy a piece of this, right? There's plenty of people who are capable of doing that who maybe, are on different parts of the political spectrum, right? George Soros and other people buy all the time like this. So that's one of the interesting things I find about Twitter is it's one of the only public platforms that you could actually vote with your dollar on.
I have so many thoughts about this idea that it's relatively easy for somebody to put together a consortium of a couple $1 billion to invest in Twitter, which is like only barely makes money. Like, I don't know about that, right? There are not that. That's
the New York Times could. The New York Times could put together $1 billion tomorrow. They could just go to their bankers and put together $1 billion and buy some of it. They could buy 3 or 4% of it.
There is a version in which there could be a bidding war for Twitter shares, and that would be pretty interesting. Right? Like, it would be interesting if somebody was like, I'm concerned about this existential threat that, Elon Musk's ownership in Twitter represents for the public square. And so I'm going to like buy an equal and opposite number of shares, either via a DAO or with
I'm not saying civilians can do it. I'm not saying like
right. Okay.
A civilian can do it. I'm talking about people of means. There are tons of them across the spectrum, and they could buy different, and they have, right? So people with different, and corporations with different political leanings could buy portions of it. And I think actually that's a potential outcome here.
I mean, that would be super interesting because look, we have no idea. This is part of what makes this so awkward is because there's only one person in there. There's a handful of people in the world who might be able to understand what Elon is thinking about this. And weirdly, you're one of them. And like, you're really good at, but so no one knows. Let's just keep it simple.
I think you can take Elon. What I would say is, I think you can take Elon as his word
here.
Elon, you probably take Elon at his word. He thinks it's important. He said it's a public square. He said freedom of speech is important. I think you take him at his word.
And he thinks the product is broken, right? Or needs help.
We all think the product could be better.
He asked at one point, I think, if Twitter was dying, since many of the most followed accounts.
I thought that was a good tweet, actually. And I responded to it. Like, they really have not thought about Justin Bieber at all, right? They haven't thought about Katy Perry and those kind of people. I think he name-checked both of them. And, if you look at those two, anyway,
Taylor Swift.
Look at TikTok. I responded with a TikTok screenshot. And I was like, look, TikTok puts Bieber's tracks right on his profile. If Twitter was like run properly over the years, and it has not been run properly ever. I mean, that's why I
completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Zuckerberg called it the clown car that drove into a diamond mine. Like, put merch on your profile page, put tracks on your profile page, and let people sell their tickets. And all of a sudden, those people would be super engaged again. They could make that in like a team of 5 developers and 5 product managers. It's just a SWAT team of 10, literally $1 million team. That $2 million team, they get paid well there. $2 million team could build this in 6 months and then iterate on it every 3 months. And they could be the best platform for musicians with a team of 10 people and $2 million a year. And that would generate, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for those artists, and they would be there, but they're not being courted. If you're an accredited investor, you need to know about special purpose vehicles. So what is an SPV? Well, it's an investment vehicle that allows up to 250 investors to invest up to $10 million by one entity on a cap table. So if you're an angel investor and you got a bunch of rich friends like I do, you could start your own syndicate and power it through an SPV. Here at Launch, we love working with the team out of Shore. They power all of my syndicates, which is the largest one in the world, with over 10,000 members, and we've done hundreds of deals. Ashore is the leading providers of SPVs and fund administration with over $2.5 billion in AUA, assets under administration. And they've done over 5,000 completed transactions. And they've developed an innovative software program called Glassboard. This automates the entire investment experience from entity formation all the way to an IPO. Ashley and Heidi on my team who manage the syndicate.com love the interface and use it every single day. And not only do investors love it, but founders love it as well because it keeps their cap tables nice and clean. No messy party rounds over here. No, they also manage the entire process over the life of the investment. So to get 20% off your first special purpose vehicle, SPV, I want you to visit assure.co/twist. That's assure.co/TWIST to get 20% off your first SPV.
I mean, it is interesting. Like, I think it's worth looking at why Twitter might be dying. Like, I still use Twitter a fair amount, but my usage has certainly declined. And
because
so I was listening
harassment
because it's not, because it's not fun, right? So I was listening to the All In podcast, and obviously, like a whole lot of the conversations around this involve this concept of free speech. And I always roll my eyes when people call it that because censorship is a tool of government, not private companies. But also, I was thinking about why I have this reflexive response, and many people I know have this reflexive response, and it's because for women and women of color and people from marginalized groups, the speech on Twitter has never been free. Right? It has always come
you get
at
brigaded.
A high cost. You get brigaded, you get yelled. Like, I have long since censored myself on Twitter because it sucks to be on Twitter if you got more than 20,000 followers and you're a lady. And so this idea that the rich white guys who are left just discovered that sometimes it's not that fun to be on Twitter and they want more free speech. And a lot of the speech they seem to be advocating for is disinformation or harassment. It's like,
well, no, I don't think anybody's, in fairness, I don't think anybody is advocating for that. I think it's more like, I think COVID-19 was a big trigger for folks. And like the blocking of the New York Post, I know for Sachs, like that was a big one. But, when you give them the examples of, and I think Trump was a big one for some people. And I think, the Trump one, I did not want to see Trump get banned as president because I thought it was important that the president be on there. But when he gave them the easy, like, I'm causing a riot and people are going to die, I wouldn't have done a lifetime ban. I would have done doubling bans every time he does something. So like it was a 1-year ban and then he does it again. Now it's a 3-year ban, kind of like how the justice system works. So anyway, that's just like a nuance. But I understand your point. Like it's a different experience. But they added that feature where you can have only your people can reply. Sure, do you use that feature? I'm curious because I started using it.
Of it. I don't think I use the version where only people who follow me can reply. I mean, my Twitter. Look, I am very lucky. Also, my Twitter's not that bad.
Yours
is really
bad,
not. And I don't know if it's I don't think it's mean. It's probably because I have spent a long time censoring myself and being a lot nicer on Twitter. And also I'm a very aggressive blocker, not Andreessen level blocker, but I'm on
a scale of 1 to Mark Andreessen, you're like a 7
is optional for me. Like I don't have to listen to this and I block. But anyway, I guess all I'm saying is like Twitter probably is dying because as a product, there's very little upside. like you can get attention, you can build a brand, but it's mostly sort of like journalists and people who like to fight with each other, which actually leads quite nicely into our next story. Because what it really comes down to is like, what is Twitter for? Who is Twitter for? And what would make it work best?
It's a full contact platform, right? I mean, just the nature of how it's designed that anybody on the platform can respond to anybody is like hugely, and this was Ev's and Jack's original vision, that it was the most open platform. Right. So if you were a celebrity, if you were a politician, you couldn't control your own replies. So you choose this, you got to answer to everybody. It's like, you can't just like speak to your constituents. Although they did add that feature, which I just talked about, like only allow my followers or people I follow to comment. So they did eventually add that. But that was the antithesis of what Jack and Ev and Biz wanted in the beginning. They were very clear. You want to be on this platform, you got to answer to everybody. We're celebrities, politicians, journalists, sports figures. This is the open platform. You don't get to delete when people reply to you. You could report, but they did actually let you hide replies now. So they actually did wind up adding those features. I just don't think people use them liberally. But anyway, I think this,
I agree. I think people don't use them liberally. I like, we talk all the time about the evolution of these platforms in a way that sort of follows what society does. Like there's just only so much that you can say whatever you want to people or create bots to brigade them or, pass around information that causes real world harm. Right? I think the real world harm thing is real.
I think this is like one of your good insights here is like I think actually Elon's talked about this a lot about like all the crypto scams and all the fake accounts that put like a blue, whatever icon next to their names and try to get people to send ETH or whatever, Ethereum. And YouTube has that problem too. All these fake accounts, like there was a 24-hour Chamath channel for a while trying to get people to send Bitcoin to a wallet that was supposedly Chamath's. All that bot problem could be easily solved. And I think Twitter is like technically incompetent and just doesn't solve that problem. Here's an idea. Like if you were paying for the service if you paid for the VIP level of a service, like I have 500,000, you have 200,000, he's got 70 million. Like for people with over 100,000, you pay $1,000 a year for like VIP service. For people over $1 million, you pay 5,000 a year, whatever it is. Like if you choose, that could get you VIP customer support where you can literally call somebody on the phone and say, listen, look at my replies. Where you can email somebody, hey, can you look at my replies if somebody's pretending to be me? And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll delete that account right now. Thank you. Thanks for calling, Molly. Or you say, hey, listen, I'm being harassed. You email your customer support rep. Hey, listen, there's somebody who's been harassing me. Feels like there's a bot army. And then they're like, yeah, okay, we're going to neuter that bot army. Like how amazing would that be if they turned the biggest problem into a profit center? Like it would actually be kind of cool.
To be fair, although that is a lovely product idea that I would happily pay for, that would take it even farther away from the idea of the public square.
It would just
the
be
town square. If indeed we buy the idea that that's what Twitter is, which is some sort of a town square where like ideas are exchanged and it should be as free as possible and everybody's an equal because you can't buy your way out of the misery, right?
No, you could pay. You could pay. It would just be a sliding scale. So if you have 10,000 people,
not the town square.
Yeah, but this is like if you go to the town square and you want to, order a glass of champagne from the restaurant that's on the town square, you could.
We don't like the town square. We want to create, but that's what I'm saying. That's society. What you're describing is society.
Yes.
Right. A big messy town square where everybody's equal and accountable to all the same people, and nobody can buy their way out of that experience. That's not what society wants. That never
no. People do not want to wait in line. They want to have a VIP line at the DMV. Absolutely.
Everybody eventually wants a VIP line. So if Twitter is going to become a better product, it's going to become less of a town square.
Yeah. I mean, it'll have town square like, features. But I thought this New York Times, which is a great segue. Why don't we segue into that for a moment? Because this is also super telling.
So many people on Twitter are journalists that it's funny actually, because like 7 or 8 years ago, maybe I ran out of time to do it. But I was like, I am going to get Marty Barron and Dean Baquet and whoever was at the Washington or was it the Journal. Marty Barron was the Post.
Anyway,
Gerard,
the top
Baker,
editors, top
Baker,
CEOs, whatever.
Right. And I was going to be like, you need to come to my panel at South by Southwest and you need to explain to me why you're allowing your journalists on Twitter, because Twitter has become the assignment desk for the mainstream media. And that is terrible.
Yeah.
And now here comes Dean Baquet, who just woke up out of his, decade-long coma and was like, whoa, this is kind of a mess.
Microacquire is a startup acquisition marketplace that cuts out everyone in the middle. Basically, this means they help a startup get acquired super efficiently. Yes, if you're a founder looking to sell, Microacquire is free, it's private, and nobody is going to get into the middle of your deal and insert their motivations, which might not be in your best interest. To date, while they've helped hundreds of startups get acquired, I kid you not, and they've facilitated hundreds of millions of dollars in closed deal volume. Their platform includes over 120,000 buyers that pay $390 a year for a subscription, and thousands of startups currently are listed for sale at Microacquire. They've had hundreds of successful acquisitions so far. So founders can get free access instantly to over 120,000 trusted buyers, and you're going to stay totally anonymous. On the other side of the marketplace, again, buyers are paying that $390 a year, so you know they're serious. Microacquire will help you find a buyer for your startup. It's as simple as that. Buyers can browse listings for free, and the platform is totally free for sellers. Sign up for a premium subscription right now for just $390 a year to access all these great deals at try.microacquire.com/twist. Once again, try.acquire.com/twist.
The New York Times has told its reporters to stop tweeting so much after, by the way, really creating an environment in which if you were not on Twitter, you could not get hired as a new journalist.
They were hiring people based on follower count. Let's be honest.
They were hiring people based on follower count without question because they're star makers and they want people to come in with a brand.
They want traffic. It's a traffic-based.
They want traffic.
Or I should say it was a traffic-based business. So that may actually be the nuance here.
So now reporters can still be on Twitter, but are encouraged to, quote, meaningfully reduce how much time you're spending on the platform, tweeting or scrolling in relation to other parts of your job, according to Dean Baquet. So tweet less, tweet more thoughtfully, and devote more time to reporting.
I'm sorry, reporting? Can you define that? What is that exactly? Does that mean retweets? Are retweets reporting or liking? Building a list, is that reporting?
Call people who are not on Twitter and find out what the actual story is.
What about the trending topics? That's reporting. If you go to trending topics and you pick the number 6781 that appeals to your sensibility and you write a story based on that, that's the real world. I mean, this goes back to the Chappelle quote. Twitter's not the real world. That's your point as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Twitter is not the real world. The push to have reporters tweet less. And again, we're sort of reporting this somewhat credulously, as though the New York Times itself had not just gotten caught up in a scandal in which a departing reporter accused it of trying to stifle individual brands and creativity. And then
Taylor Lorenz.
And then Maggie Haberman, who nobody really realizes this. She's legacy at the New York Times. Like her father was a legendary New York Times reporter, one of the people who helped build the place, right? So she is a grandfathered in access reporter who will never not be a star.
Define access reporter for people who don't understand access journalism.
So access journalism is the idea that the stories that you break, you are able to break a lot of news because you've cultivated a whole series of sources who will tell you stuff. You have access to them. As a result, you don't burn that access. You just don't.
What's pernicious about that is?
What's pernicious about that is you never know if there's information that is being held back in the interest of preserving access. And most likely there is. And actually a classic example of this is when the books come out and the books contain information that was arguably in the public interest and could have been reported much sooner, but it was saved for the book because they had all this great access and they didn't want to blow it up.
Got it. And so if you were to write the truth, or the full truth, let's say they put 87% out, that last 13%, if that were to make the subject perturbed, then you don't get them for the next story, which means you don't get the $500,000 or $1 million paycheck or whatever these access journalists are getting. Maybe you don't get the $1 million podcast deal. Maybe you don't have the $1 million conference deal. Maybe the $3 million book deal. All that stuff goes away if you don't have access to the subjects.
Exactly. When in fact, a lot of times the subjects making the news, sure, a lot of them are politicians and a lot of them are people in the White House, but a lot of them are just people out in the world. There are great
Business
stories
people.
that you can tell without relying on leaks. And because the other downside of access journalism is you are most likely constantly being spun. Like,
yes, you're being worked.
You're being worked.
Yes.
I actually had a rule on Marketplace Tech, which is that we very rarely interviewed companies. Like, I hardly ever had CEOs on. We almost never talked
you would
to
talk
companies.
to who?
We would talk to real people. Like, we would talk
employees.
to people. We'd talk to employees, or we would talk
customers.
To people actually, on the receiving end of products. We talked to be fair, we talked to a fair number, like more than we should have, of analysts and academics. But analysts and academics may be trying to sell a book, but the incentives are a little bit different from someone who's trying to build a company or spin a story politically, right? In the case of political access journalism.
Which is why when you'll hear me on this podcast, if somebody starts doing that meeting trading bullshit, I just tell them right up, like, hey, I know you want to tell me the GoCoff origin story. Just tell me the margins, because that's all anybody gives about. Like, let's be honest here. Like, how the are you making this business work?
Yep.
Like, what is the goddamn margin? How does it work? Because everybody out here that's the question on everybody's mind. Like, yeah, we love the fact that you can get us a pack of, gum and a 6-pack of beer and whatever we're ordering in 25 minutes. But we just want to know if you're going to be here next year, because everybody else who told us the same bullshit story is not here. Cosmo's not here. This isn't here. That's not here. Urban Fetch isn't here.
I just love how mad you are still about that. It's amazing.
No, I find, what it is I just hate
totally
these,
true.
I hate these media training people. I hate PR people, with the exception of like 2 who I'm friendly with. They just constantly are like, here's what you do.
It's not real.
They ask you a question, and then we have this stump speech for you that makes you look really good. And if we keep telling it over and over again, just don't. Here's the thing: if you're media trained and you want to spin that book, just don't come on the show. Molly and I can talk about your business better with you not here. If you're going to do the media training, if you come here, have a real goddamn conversation. Period. End of story. End of clip. Clip this. Send to the next PR person who tries to work us. I
mean, that also, everything you said is also why I never chased CEO interviews, because or very rarely. And every time I had one, it would be like a letdown, because they're not, especially the bigger the company, God help me, it's just boring.
That's why terrible. You are a huge fan of the CEOs who talk candidly and real on Twitter.
Oh, bravo. Well played, sir. Well played.
Oh,
so back to the New York Times.
To the New York Times.
We are taking at face value the idea that Vacay is worried that journalists are spending too much time on Twitter, that their perceptions might be warped by what they see there, that they're no longer part of the real world, which again, a decade too late. And also, they just had this like absurd back and forth with Taylor Lorenz and other, big name journalists, like essentially attacking her on Twitter. It is probably just as much reputational damage that Vacay is trying to control for here as it is time and a warped sense of reality. But the warped sense of reality on Twitter, I think, should be the basis of all of this. Like, it is not good journalism to be getting outraged by stuff you see on Twitter and then turning that into outrageous stories.
This is, I think, a key point. If your goal is to tell the truth to the audience, then you're not telling the truth if you're mitigating through the warped lens of social media. That is not reality. How people behave on Twitter is crazy. And the other thing that's damaging to the New York Times brand. So there's one is, okay, the input, your view of the world and what you're going to write, the input is up. Now, here's the other thing that gets totally screwed up is the perception of the paper over time. So Sarah Jeong, Jeong.
Yeah.
I guess she's not part of the New York Times anymore. Remember when they brought her on, then somebody went through her tweets, which is what happens every time. Let's look at your tweets. Now, if you were on Twitter, like in the 2008 to 2018 period, it was a chat room. It wasn't really people didn't know you were going to be like pulling their tweets in their job interviews. People were pretty loosey-goosey. And she said like all kinds of crazy stuff, like white men this, da-da-da. And whether she was joking or not, or, I don't really care if people have like cheeky opinions or their full contact. But for the New York Times, it just gave ammunition to critics every time she wrote something that she's anti this group, anti that group, super woke, whatever. And I'm not just calling her out. This happens on the right as well. And it happens far right, far left.
Right.
Everybody's got some tweet, comedians, whatever, that didn't age well. And that's the problem, is like, I think the paper wants to be respected for doing good work. So if you're got a warped view of reality and then you're acting cheeky or crazy, or, you know, your comedy doesn't land because you're not Dave Chappelle, but you're trying to make jokes on Twitter and it doesn't land and it offends people, you're not in a comedy club, right? The context matters. In a comedy club, you say a joke, people go, okay, it's a joke. It was good. It was bad. It's a 1 to 10. Okay, I laughed. I didn't. Let's go on to the next joke. On Twitter, they're like, is that a joke, or do you actually hate white men? Or do you actually like to use, you know, this word that's not appropriate? Like, or do you use that word all the time? Is that like who you are? And yada, yada. So I mean, part of it is the perception of New York Times journalists is bad.
Yes. And the problem that the New York Times has is in wanting to have it both ways. They want this perception of gravitas and journalism that's above the fray and ivory tower and actually listening to everybody, but they also want stars because people click for stars. Yes. So they want to collect personalities, and they want to collect them based on their like potentially outrageous tweets. What's so interesting about Sarah Jeong is that they hired her, took all the flack for that, and then I think when they fired her, it's because she tweeted about the New York Times. Oh, she left.
She left. Okay.
She left. The Times did not announce its departure or her departure from the editorial board in August, but it happened after she tweeted about the New York Times, I think. Or wait, no, that was in September. She left in August. She is now a contracted contributor for New York Times Opinion. The news regarding her status came hours after she raised eyebrows on Twitter over her response, to a columnist for The Guardian who was urging against people canceling their subscriptions. And she said, oh, New York Times definitely pays attention to subscriber cancellations. One of the metrics for outrage that they use, she wrote, to distinguish between real outrage and superficial outrage was when people canceled their subscriptions. And the New York Times was like, whoa. You can tweet a lot of crazy stuff, but you can't put out our dirty laundry. And now you're out.
That makes sense.
They want it both ways. And it's so dirty. And it's so, and Taylor Lorenz is 100% right about the way the New York Times is a star picker, right? They're like, we've decided that you can be a star, but you cannot. And we'll choose. And we want that. And we want this like tons of attention, but also we want to be the most respected name in journalism. It's like, I'm sorry, like you actually can't have all that.
Yeah. It is it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's officially a thing. And I think this is great for the New York Times because as someone who is highly addicted to Twitter, you know, it's a couple hours a day of my life every day. If you start adding it up, it means they could file one more time a week. It means they can get one more scoop every 2 weeks. You know, you live by the gun, you die by the gun is kind of
one more actual person, you know,
talk to somebody on the phone. Yes.
Talk to somebody on the phone. I did it like just, and then I swear I'm going to stop dunking on the New York Times, but I have history.
Yeah. You work there. Yeah.
I did the How We Survive podcast, right? So one of the people that we talked to, they did this like smoochy story about this tribe, that members of this tribe that were opposing this mine, and they had teamed up with these like two white guys who were environmental activists. And the Times like quoted this guy like crazy and and they were like, we love him. And then I did a smooth 5-minute DuckDuckGo and was like, that guy actually is an environmental terrorist. Right? Like, It took me 5 minutes on the internet to find out that he's a co-founder of a group that advocated for the end of industrial society as the only way to solve the climate crisis. And this was the guy who got the full
top billing in the New York Times.
He got the poll quote. They quoted him, of course, over the Native American woman who was representing her tribe and opposing. Like, the reporting is objectively suffering. Objectively.
It's obviously suffering. And you know, when I took my last Twitter break, I finished my book. And then I finished 25% of the new book. And I'm going to start my next one. I'm going to finish the book this summer. It's going to go summer to summer. And, you know, I'll just take 3 months off and do like one tweet a day or whatever. And that'll be my thing.
Yeah. Speaking of Twitter,
our favorite associate producer, Ryan Breslow. Shout out to Ryan Breslow.
Silicon Valley
associate producer of This Week in Startups. He blocked me. He was like, I thought we were besties. And I was like, you were on the pod. I don't know your parents' name. If you have any siblings, I've never had dinner with you. I was having this conversation with my wife and I was like, not sure if this person is actually a good friend of ours. We've seen them 10 times, at social events, but I don't know their parents' name. I don't know their siblings. I don't know how they met. Never had dinner one-on-one with them. Therefore, they're not like friends. Like they're associates or they're acquaintances. Like, so anyway, Ryan was like, I thought we were friends. And I was like, are we friends? Really?
Oh man.
I don't know about that. Or something similar to that. Like, anyway, Ryan is still on his jihad. And he's
Senior
off
Silicon
of his
Valley correspondent Ryan Breslow reporting today
reporting from the field. His investigative journalist, Ryan Breslow, dancing like a fool on psychedelics. Joking.
So awesome.
Joking.
This is so awesome.
He went, I guess he came up with a new term, shadow fired, that the Instacart founder was shadow fired, I guess is his claim. He was shadow fired.
That was me.
Okay, sorry. Producer Nick came up with this term shadow fired. Fantastic. Great. I don't
want to misattribute to Ryan.
Okay, very good.
Nick's
Thank you. Also, and he's like, I would also like my
amazing.
flowers. You get your flowers. I gave you flowers for Sassol. I gave you flowers for shadow fired. Very good. So Breslow hot off his creative writing class in all his free time and his triumphant victory, just beating Dom into submission and then telling him he would back his next company. Oh my God, he's a master troll.
He really is a master troll.
Creative writer, poster, and investigative journalist said he now compares Sequoia to the mafia, Don, and he accused Sequoia of axing the Instacart CEO to pave the way for an IPO as a way to return monies to their LPs. This thing is so unbelievably ridiculous, but I guess we have to go through it because, so
he doesn't appear to have been 100% wrong about Vast. So
okay, sure, that's probably true. So I mean, a lot of times when we know this as journalists, having both been journalists, you're starting to triangulate on a story, and there could be some things that are true, and then things you're filling in or your mind fills in,
right?
Reasonably, but that are not true. He said that they were able to oust the former CEO by hiring Instacart's former CFO, Ravi Gupta, in 2019 to conspire against the founder and CEO, Apoorv Mehta. Yes, I've met him before. So Gupta, I guess the former CFO, became a partner at Sequoia. This is his claim. Sequoia obviously led the $8.5 million Series A in Instacart in 2013. So they have a nice chunk of the company. And
he basically says, if you hit the gist of the accusation is that Sequoia was like, we need a liquidity event, and that Instacart is a good option because the others are continuing to grow really incredibly fast. Instacart's growing fine, or really quickly. So we should push them toward an IPO. And maybe Apoorv Mehta did not want that IPO. And so the idea here, again, according to the Twitter thread, is that by bringing in this CFO who really knew all the dirt, they were able to build a pressure campaign against Mehta and push him out and sort of say like, oh, we had managerial chaos. And, he's like, the reasons are pretty weak why they ousted him.
Okay,
and then
so there's two pieces. CEO. There's two huge flaws here. Number one, Sequoia has been very clear that they're holding their positions in public companies as part of the new Sequoia fund. They're not trying to liquidate their stuff. So this idea that Sequoia needs liquidity is farcical. So that is like, so even if they did oust the CEO or the CEO was fired for performance, however you want to frame that, right? Because we're talking about how you frame the CEO leaving. Yep. Were they fired for performance? Did they collaborate on it because they weren't doing a good job and they felt like they hit their top? But if you look at the revenue numbers for the company, maybe you could read the last 3 years revenue numbers. Do you have those handy there, or can somebody pull those up? Because he did put the screenshots of it. And I think the issue with Instacart was Whole Foods got bought. They had a crazy dependency on that. Uber Eats, Postmates start doing grocery. Amazon starts getting heavy into grocery. And the founder, I think had challenges around massive competition, and maybe the company didn't rise to that occasion might be the issue here. And again, I don't have, I'm associated with Sequoia as well. I don't have inside information on this, just to super be clear before I get reaggregated on this.
Right. But here are the numbers, right? Let's take into account the fact that these numbers occurred during a pandemic when everybody was ordering everything. So in 2019, Instacart made $735 million. 2020, $1.5 billion. Boom, right? Amazing
so they
growth.
Double year over year during the pandemic makes a lot of sense. And before that, they were up 50% roughly. And they were growing 50% a year, it looks like.
But then from 2020 to 2021, which is again, still during a pandemic when you would assume that a lot of people had built habits around grocery ordering, all of a sudden revenue slows dramatically. 1.5 billion to 1.8 billion. They grow
20%.
20%.
And the valuation got crazy. It was like 39 billion at the peak, and it recently went down to 24 billion. I think that move was so that they could give employees stock options. But I think that this is made up nonsense, to be totally honest. The only person who really knows, I guess, is the board of why he left. But
I have no idea. And as a friend of mine pointed out, it's the new CEO that was brought in. One of Breslow's claims that the new CEO doesn't know anything about logistics. What the new CEO does know, though, evidently, is advertising, right? And how to make money on digital products. So there's value in that. The Instacart product itself, like from a design and usability perspective, completely stalled.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Zero has changed. I mean, I have this experience. I use Good Eggs. I use Uber Eats now. I use DoorDash and Amazon. And they keep adding better and better features. And let's face it, Instacart is the same exact product, and it's not perfect. I mean, the amount of items Instacart gets wrong per order is what for you? 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the day, but it's always something. It's always something. There's never a perfect order. I did have a perfect order yesterday. I rarely use it anymore, too, because at some point, you actually can't continue to justify paying a 40% premium.
It's kind of expensive.
I mean, you spend 40 to 50% between the service fee and I think there's a gas fee now, and then the markup on the groceries, and then the tip.
It depends on the size of the order. If you're doing a $200 order, then it goes down to maybe, what would it be, 20%? $40 to deliver it?
Yeah.
So for 200, it's 20%. If you're doing 100, it's 40%, right? So I think it's the order size.
Order size is how they calculate the tip. Yeah. But I'm just saying, there's a markup on the groceries.
Right.
Which used to be a lot more transparent. And they would tell you which stores had a markup and which stores didn't. And now I'm assuming that they all do because they don't say it anymore. But so the groceries cost more already to order from Instacart.
Yeah.
And there's a service fee and there's a tip and and so you literally will end up paying 50% more than what you would have paid if you went to the store. That's bonkers. Yeah. It's bonkers. It's just not. So I think there are a lot of reasons, a lot of headwinds why this might have happened. But then, of course, obviously, Twitter was just in love with the tweet thread. Neil Khosla tweeting, "Don't take money from Sequoia" is one of the hotter takes I've seen. I mean, yeah. I mean, just to recap Ryan Breslow's advice for founders, don't go to YC. Don't take money from all the top venture firms and create a block against your competitors and win. Yeah. I mean, again, he did not appear to be 100% wrong about fast. No. So who knows, right? But even he was like, to be clear, I don't know. I've just heard this from people and I don't know if it's true at all. And then Eric Newcomer from Bloomberg, who's just so great. And I saw you responded to him, said, Silicon Valley loathes the tech press until it realizes that anonymously sourced stories get replaced with an endless stream of Ryan Breslow's unhinged speculative tweet storms. I mean, it falls into the category of something TechCrunch was doing, which I disagreed with at the time. And I told the founder in the early days, which is they dubbed process journalism. And I was like, what's process journalism? Like, it's what Valleywag and TechCrunch do. We just publish something that comes into the tip line, and then we let the entire audience read it and then ask them if it's true. And I was like, are you guys deranged? That's not process journalism. That's slander or just not doing any work. And they're like, yeah, well, we could call people. They're just going to not give us a comment. So we might as well just float the thing. We've heard. And that's what a lot of places did. You can basically say the story now is everybody's talking about this rumor. Yeah. So
Is that really journalism to say like, everybody's saying that this person is in the closet? I mean, this is what Gawker did. They just took people who were, instead of saying they were outing somebody, they just said, everybody's talking about Anderson Cooper. Everybody's talking about Tim Cook. This is when they were both in the closet. And we're reporting on the rumor. It was like, really? Like, okay, fine. Just a low level of journalism. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think that the New York Times is worried that some of that is starting to happen to their journalism. Because I will say, on the plus side, when I was there was none of that. And at one point, I was even like, what about, like, I think this might be a story. And what if we sort of like put out a blog post and to see if it was a story? And it was like,
no way.
We 100% don't do that. And I appreciated too in The Dropout, watching how careful, how realistic that portrayal was of an editor who's like, I'm sorry, it sucks. I know you want to go with this, but you cannot because you don't have
Get this person on the record.
Get the story. And I did.
And then not off the record, on the record.
On the record. And I did appreciate that in my time at the Times, that there was none. And I appreciate that about, like, for example, here, right? We're like, we do diligence a certain way. That's the deal.
If somebody doesn't want to participate in diligence, it tells you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't want to have a board and you've raised $10 million, you don't want to have like insurance or have a board or have, like, if you don't want to run the company professionally, like, why would you raise money for a company then? Like, that's kind of the idea here, is to do that. We have so much more to talk about. Just to give you a preview of tomorrow's show, things we didn't get to on the docket today. Bloomberg sources, there's beta versions of Apple's iOS 16 going around that have some references to mixed reality headsets. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Epic, we're going to talk about Epic raising a bunch of money at a $31 billion valuation, why they might be doing that. And we might get to the Peter Thiel Bitcoin speech.
We have to get to the Peter Thiel Bitcoin speech, but it's just so much show that we can't. So we'll see you all on tomorrow's show. We're also going to be interviewing the CEO of WorldCoin for an episode that I think will drop on Wednesday or Thursday. So we got a lot of great show this week. In startups.com, youtube.com/thisweekin. And do a search for This Week in Startups Australia if you want to listen to Mark Pesce's version of this show from Down Under. I was the first guest, and give him a subscribe and a like and a review. It's a great interview, a great human being, and he's on his 10th season. The All In Summit is sold out. Gave 250 tickets to on scholarships. A lot of underrepresented founders, and we got the gender balance in the audience worked out. Looking pretty dark there for a minute. I was like, I don't want to go to this conference. There's so many dudes. I was like, 90%, 87% dudes? No, thank you. But you were pleased to know
hard at that.
We're almost at 40% female. That would be a good goal. I mean, when's the last time you went to a tech conference that was 40% female?
Yeah. Nope.
Doesn't exist, right?
Doesn't exist.
20%, 30%, I guess, would be the norm. Like in that range, I think.
I guess, yeah.
I don't say normal is the average.
Right.
Normal would be.
Yeah. No, I think 40% is good.
Now, if we can get to 40%.
If you can get that speaker,
I got the speakers. I got the speaker problem worked out. But your insights were not, your private insights to me were not incorrect. I'll just leave it at that. Let's just say there might be some besties who people want to be interviewed by less than other besties. And so it becomes a little bit of a challenge sometimes. In these polarizing times, it's just, some people just don't want to even participate in an event where people have a difference of opinion than them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. We will see you on This Week in Startups tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, producer Nick here. I want to tell you about the SaaS Syndicate. If you're a founder of a SaaS company with a product in market, our investment team wants to talk to you. Head over to thesyndicate.com/SaaS, SaaS, to apply to raise from the SaaS Syndicate. And you can join Jason's syndicate of over 9,000 accredited investors at thesyndicate.com.
Producer Justin here. Know a cool startup? Check out openscouting.com, where anyone can refer a startup to our investment team here at launch. Even if you don't know the founder, if you're the first to flag a company for us and we decide to invest, you'll get $5,000 in cash or 10% of our carry.
Hey everybody, producer Rachel here. Are you an early stage startup that has product and market, some traction, and are looking to raise at least $500,000? Apply today to Remote Demo Day for your chance to pitch to over 9,000 investors in Jason's syndicate. Submit your application at remotedemoday.com. Our next event is on April 27th.
And if you want to learn how to invest in startups from the world's greatest angel investor, and no, we're not talking about Chris Sacca, then head to angel.university to apply. The 4-hour workshop costs $300 and all proceeds are donated to charity. To date, we've donated over $175,000 to various charities, and you can see the full list at angel.university/charity.